Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today I am joined by my colleagues to break down your horoscopes for the month of September. You guys met all the new co-hosts last month, but if you haven't met them yet, I'll reintroduce them to you today. Very excited to have a new group of people helping me do horoscopes month by month. Today we're going to be looking at your horoscopes for September for sun or rising signs. You can listen to these. And we're going to be looking at the lunar eclipse coming up in Pisces, followed by a solar eclipse in Virgo. We'll talk a little bit generally at the outset of today's conversation about the significations of solar and lunar eclipses in general, maybe some thoughts about the Virgo Pisces axis. And then we'll take turns breaking down your sun or rising sign horoscopes. You can listen to these for either always, though I recommend your rising sign because from the whole sign house perspective, your rising sign horoscope will always correspond with the transits to your actual natal chart. So, but if you listen to your sun sign, that's fine too. Okay, well, on that note, before we get into it, as always, remember to like and subscribe. If you give that little thumbs up, if you drop a comment in the comment section, certainly if you subscribe, if you're not yet, all of that helps us tremendously to grow this community and channel. That's how we keep going as a business and community. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, nightlightastrology.com. When you are there for this month of August, our promotion is for the retreat that we're taking next June. So if you go to the events, go to Immersive Retreat, the Oracle Within, a training in the theory and practice of divinatory astrology takes place next June of 2026 in Mexico. We are getting to almost halfway full in, as I'm recording this, just the first week or so of the registration being open. So the early bird lasts until early October, but I would try to get in on this as soon as you can if you want to go. And at the end of today's talk, after I sign off, there's an informational video telling you everything you need to know about the retreat, what it includes, who it's for in terms of what background you need to have, how to register, what the format of the retreat is like. So check that out at the end today if you are interested. And be sure to check out all of our other offerings. We have a shop filled with all sorts of workshops and talks. Our courses, we have another first-year course starting in November, our affordable reading service that has different tiered pricings of readings so that people are not priced out of readings with talented students from our programs. All sorts of really good stuff to check out there. Okay. On that note, I am very excited to bring our crew back. Kelsey, Emily, Mal, Q. Welcome back, guys.
Hey, everybody.
Hey. Hello.
Yay, it's good to be back. August was a powerful month. That meeting of the benefics that we focused on last month in my own chart was very powerful in terms of some family events that came up. I told the story on my YouTube channel, and I can't wait to hear from you guys and what you thought about it. Maybe we could reflect on that just a little bit at the beginning. But like, one of the things that happened was my dad visited, and this was maybe tied to the Mercury retrograde in Leo because that's in my fourth house, home and family. But he brought all of this memorabilia from my grandfather, who was a veteran, and in it we discovered these letters that he wrote to me when I was a little child, like a baby. And my dad I've never seen them before. And my dad had forgotten about them since I was a little baby. And we just happened to discover all of these handwritten letters that came from my grandfather as Mercury was literally appearing as a morning star in the house of parents and home and family. But that also coincided with the meeting of the benefics in Cancer. And it was really amazing because my grandpa was a really stoic, like hardworking, just kind of very Capricornian type of person. He's actually a Leo, but so there was this incredibly funny, sensitive, gentle side to him that I got to see through these letters that I'd never seen before. That happened when the benefics came together and Mercury was appearing as the morning star after its retrograde. So it was like a really wild, unexpected, very emotional for me kind of moment. I told that story last week on the channel, but anyway, what was it like for you guys? What did you notice, or what did you see in the people around you? Or yeah, I'd just love to hear about that.
Oh, well, I mean, like we said before, we were crying. We connected with one another, and we talked about how tears have been shed. It's been very interesting. I think that like what I shared with them was just like, it's been heartbreaking. Like, it's like my heart has been broken open again and again and again. And it's helped me tap into my compassion and capability to be there and be compassionate for others. But it's been painstakingly like, ooh, ow, like not comfy, but like needed, and therapeutic. But yeah, we've had like passings in the family. There was like an accident with children, like my partner's sister and her children were in a car accident. And then like we found out another person that we know passed suddenly. So it's been like a lot of like, whoa, why? But very ancestral. So yeah, it's been a lot. And waves for sure.
Waves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think tender, emotionally tender has been the word that I've been hearing from a lot of people, clients and friends, and I have felt myself. I think I was a little unprepared actually for that. I was like, oh, this is going to be this lovely transit. So I was really grateful, Adam, for all your coverage of the more shadow side of this benefic conjunction on your channel in the last week or so, because it was really like kind of like heart achy, tender for me.
Yeah. I thought the one of the things that I wasn't anticipating was how it really struck some chords around unmet or even unrecognized emotional needs. I was like, oh, there's these parts of me that need more care, and I felt like that was a theme around me and my family. Just like I just noticed like there's a lot going on right now about what are our unmet needs. And of course, as we're adults and we're looking at that stuff, there's usually a connection to how we were raised or our background that can be really interesting, but also kind of challenging, especially if your parents are literally visiting. So it's always like, it's like Ram Dass said, if you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family. Well, that was a powerful connection. And as always, if you out there are listening to this and you have a story to share, drop us your story in the comments if you're open to sharing it. You can use the hashtag grabbed. Tell us Venus, Jupiter, and Cancer. Tell us your story. Or maybe it was something else. We had that very gnarly Mars opposition to Saturn and Neptune that was something else too. Even as we're recording this, we're just coming off a weekend in which Mercury made two very bizarre little sextiles and then was enclosed between the malefics in the meantime. That was interesting. It was like walking into a little secret room in my psyche. But yeah, that was a lot of fascinating transits. So if there's another one that we didn't cover in our horoscopes, feel free to drop anything to us, or you can email us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. This month, we're looking at the eclipses. Now we are officially back in eclipse season. So that usually means there will be a rush of new subscribers because people watch astrology around the eclipses, especially. It's always like you can time it. I'm like, oh, well, viewership will probably spike this month because it's eclipse season again. And as soon as you get eclipse in a YouTube title, there's lots more clicks. But why? Like, why are these eclipses so powerful? Why do they trigger something so deep in us? Because, there's a lot more people who aren't daily into astrology whose ears perk up when it's eclipse season. The reason for that, outside of it having thousands of years of historical weight across our entire planet, not just in the Hellenistic astrological tradition, but in many different traditions, is that they carry history. Eclipse cycles are like every month we have a new moon and we have a full moon. And that is a cycle that, our psychic clocks are wired to that cycle, whether we track the moon regularly or not. We're moving along those cycles all the time. And the new moons are always the seeding point of a new cycle. The full moons usually bring that cycle's fruits onto the tree, heavy, dense. They're a culminating point or a fruiting point karmically. And then they shed their fruit and we sort of integrate the cycle, and then we start again. When eclipses come around, which happen in sets every year, what we're talking about is that particular cycles within a year are going to carry this weight where it's not just that monthly cycle, it's years of cycles that have recurred in the same place. And every 9 years, every 18 years, we're planting new seeds within much longer arcs of time, you could say. and we're gathering the fruits of those cycles, experiencing the karmic harvesting of old cycles. Our solar eclipses are typically about the start of new cycles and the planting of new seeds. However, when you have solar eclipses around the south node of the moon, what's interesting is that the south node has this connotation throughout astrological history of being about harvesting and gathering of insights from past cycles. So what's interesting about the upcoming solar eclipse that we have is that it's with the south node in Virgo. There can be a distinct feeling of a new cycle that is beginning, but it's closely associated with the harvesting of long developing lessons, insights, patterns, themes. I like to think of it like South Node has long been associated, for example, with people hitting rock bottom and getting sober. It's a very South Node kind of metaphor. Doesn't have to be that extreme, of course, but when we have solar eclipses around the South Node, you get the feeling of like someone's going to rehab. It's a new chapter, but it's rooted in, I've got to clear the past. The North Node, we have a lunar eclipse coming up in, which is interesting because it's kind of the opposite scenario. North Node eclipses typically are about the future and desire, and the way that desire is taking us into areas that have been relatively unexplored. There's a real hunger or thirst. There's something we haven't done, haven't tasted, haven't developed, or there's an eagerness or excitement about something that's relatively unknown. And so we have a lunar eclipse in Pisces around the North Node coming up, which is again a little bit almost like a little paradoxical, because a lunar eclipse is bringing things to fruition that have history behind them. But here we're talking about something coming to fruition that has history behind it, that's also taking place in an area where there are relatively new desires taking shape. This means that there's a real profound opportunity to be reflecting on what kinds of desires we've been trying to work with or develop, especially in the Pisces area of our birth chart, that we're getting some really powerful feedback around that can continue to shape and refine and direct our path going forward. So these North Node eclipses in Pisces are still very much about the future and unknown desires and new frontiers, but the culmination of events in a lunar eclipse around that North Node have the power to give us almost like instant feedback along a new path. So that's how I've been thinking about it. There's other things we could say about the Virgo Pisces axis or anything else that comes to mind with these eclipses. But again, the full moon lunar eclipses have a sense of harvesting old cycles, bringing things to culmination, closure, completion, or resolution, whereas the solar eclipses tend to plant new seeds, open new chapters. I think that's a reliable way of thinking about them. What else could we add to the equation that might be useful for everyone? Just popcorn, whoever wants to jump in.
Yeah, I associate the Virgo Pisces axis with our karma around service, and maybe even that martyr archetype. Like, why are we giving what we do to others, and where does it come from? Are we being of service because there's some like underlying belief that we're not good enough or we don't deserve a seat at the table, so we're giving in order to earn our keep? Or are we giving and being of service because we feel it's in our like highest good, and we also receive from giving when it's in alignment? So I think a lot of those themes could be coming up around eclipse season, like giving too much or having reckonings with why am I making this person my project, or why am I obligated to this task that doesn't actually fit how I want to be of service.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I'll hop in. Just echoing that as well. I was thinking a lot about how this axis helps us to really align our unconscious intentions with our conscious intentions. So, like, let's say we have this call right now to move forward towards a new opportunity, a new job, a new relationship, and our conscious intention is, I'm ready for this. But if we have an unconscious intention that's, I'm attached to this comfort of this familiar experience that I have, even though it's, not something that I'm connected with anymore, it can be really hard to disconnect from that. So I think a lot of last month with the Cancerian welling up of emotions and some of the relational challenges that we had to face, it's helping us to reconnect our unconscious intentions with, what we're actually saying that we want.
I love that. That's a really nice play with the solar lunar eclipses around south and north node. That's really subtle, but really nice.
The way I've been thinking about this, bear with me here, is that this eclipse series is a little unique in that this is the only season within the Virgo Pisces axis when we have eclipses solely on that axis. Our first Pisces eclipse and our first Virgo eclipse were paired with the Aries Libra axis, and then right away in our next eclipse season in February and March of next year, we're having an Aquarius eclipse come in. So this eclipse season feels a bit like a fulcrum in the series of eclipses along the Virgo Pisces axis. And to me, I'm thinking of so many astrologers have been talking about 2025 and 2026 as this threshold period between old and new, with all of those outer planets moving into new signs. And this period of time with this season that's solely on the Virgo Pisces axis in the middle of this series, with our only solar eclipse in the whole series, and it's an anaretic solar eclipse on the south node that you already talked about, Adam. This feels to me like whatever kind of karmic or fadic shifts that are happening in this next 3 to 6 month window are the final. It's like the sloughing off, the final processing of the old, and then we're moving into whatever the new is coming in. And I'm looking at it in that sense on a much more kind of collective mundane level. Obviously in people's personal lives, we're not having like, you're becoming a new person, but that's how I'm seeing it, is that this is this real kind of like reckoning moment around what is shifting. And I love, Kelsey, the unconscious versus the conscious. There's something in there that's how I'm viewing this season in particular.
Love it.
Yeah. I would kind of go off of what Emily was just kind of saying about like how potent these eclipses are, just with, we have Mercury being the depositor for the solar eclipse, and it's going to be exalted. And we also have Jupiter, the ruler of Pisces, also exalted in the sign of Cancer. So there's definitely like power, I feel like, behind the shifts in the energy of what's being communicated and what we will be experiencing with these eclipses. I think that Mercury is going to be really providing a lot of discernment. We're going to be able to distill and really refine in a way that we might want to be careful about over refining with Mercury, in high dignity, but super efficient. It may be over efficient in how we are thinking about starting these new chapters, these new things that we're stepping into. How analytical are we being with ourselves and others and the things that we're pursuing as we move forward? But I think that Jupiter being in Cancer is going to provide us emotional intelligence and like comfort and perhaps like ancestral compassion as we allow things to dissolve, these false ideologies or these realizations as they become more crystallized. Because I also noticed that I'm tracking Saturn with it being my Pisces, like Saturn return. So like, yeah, Saturn's coming back. So Saturn has just made his way back to Pisces. So really bringing like that one last go, like, okay, hey, I'm coming back. I'm letting you address this one last time. All right. I'm really dissolving away whatever has hid you in any delusions or false ideologies of what could be what you've been working towards. How can we refine that? How can we find, like, I really was focusing on how the balance between Virgo and Pisces energy, like what Mallory and Kelsey were talking about, as far as like there needs to be harmony here, and you might find that you've been leaning on one end more than the other, and there's an imbalance that you're going to be coming to a realization of. But also, if you can lean into the realizations and not fight against what's coming up as truth, and lean into it and use it as a tool, and how you can bring harmony back into your life and actually move forward. I think that would be really helpful for a lot of people. So yeah, that's kind of where I've been, where I'm just like, okay, super strong energy here. We got Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury, all kind of playing into the energies of these eclipses for sure.
Nice. Well, on that note, here is how we're distributing things today. Kelsey's got fire. She's going to take the fire signs. And then Q's got earth. We'll go in that way. Emily's got air. And Mal's got water. That will be our lineup. We're going to break down some of the significations by whole sign house for your solar lunar eclipses. Let's give you the dates for those. I'm going to pull up the real-time clock. We're going to take a look at the dates. And then I just want you to bookmark those because I can't show both situations on the chart simultaneously. So I'm going to focus on the first one on the screen. You'll see September 7th is our lunar eclipse. And then if I go forward 2 weeks to the 21st, you can see it right here. There's our 29th degree solar eclipse in Virgo. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to have September 7th on the screen, which is the first of our eclipses in Pisces. And we're going to start with Aries and go through the full wheel. And whoever's taking a turn will tell you a little bit about both. And we might focus on the house axis as a whole, some topics from the individual houses. So I've told everyone be creative, and then I'll pitch in a few thoughts as we go. And if anyone else wants to jump in as we go, that's what we'll do. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
All right, Kelsey, you're up first. We've got Aries rising with the eclipses landing in your 12th and 6th houses.
All right. So for Aries rising, these eclipses are in your 6th and 12th, as Adam just said. And this is, averse to your first house. So can feel a little bit out of your control, but that is the 12th house, things outside of our control. I would say it's less letting go and just not caring, but more about divine surrender and trusting the process of letting go, deciding intentionally to let go of something and trusting that result. I like to think a lot about our rising sign and then, how the different house zodiac signs make us that rising sign. So I was thinking about Aries people with your Pisces 12th house and how important it is for you to have the clear channel here to be able to make your bold, impulsive, cardinal, fiery, raw, instinctual moves from a place of clarity. That means that you have to have a pretty good idea of what undermines you. And you have to have a pretty good idea of what's worth sacrificing for and putting your time and energy into. I think that it's important during this eclipse season to think about the balance of, what might be overwhelming you or undermining you, and how you can maybe shift some things in your daily life to create those spaces for you to process and kind of open up that clear channel so that when you make those impulsive moves as an Aries rising that you're supposed to do, by the way, then they're coming from an informed place, not just from a reactive place. I also think, with the 12th house eclipse, this can be very healing for you. It's ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is going to be in your 4th house. So this feels very personal to, maybe some things going on behind the scenes. Saturn is also going to be back in your 12th house. Saturn really likes it there. So maybe there's something final that you're crystallizing and really integrating. I also want to say you want to be careful not to go overboard and, isolate yourself. Spending too much time on your own can be a big Aries thing. Depending on how that balance is going for you at this time in your life, you might want to see where you can balance out your sixth house. So moving to the sixth house eclipse, this is a solar eclipse, so it's a new chapter, but it's involving letting something go. And it might not feel comfortable to let go of this because of the history behind it. But we just had a new moon at the 0-degree mark of Virgo, and I feel that by the time we get to this eclipse, you might be more open to just trusting and letting the universe take the reins on this, because you're probably growing tired of caring about this thing that you've held on to. So I think that, with Virgo, there's been a lot of stuff going on in this house. We had Mars coming through here. Mercury is going to come through here in September. So maybe you're making sense of the changes that you've been feeling called to make, and you're maybe letting some things go so that that clear channel can help you make that bold move, start that new chapter. I have to say this might have to do with career, just because Saturn does rule your career and also your social affiliations and the role that you want to play in the world. This eclipse is opposing that Saturn, and it's in your sixth house. So could there be a change in career that will actually give you more a feeling of that it's worth it to you, that the energy you're putting out is repaying you? I also think there could be some sort of changes in your daily life with health routines, maybe even things that you're addicted to. Being really honest with yourself this month about what you need so that you can be that bold Aries and not have to overthink which fiery choices come into your mind. I think that Mars also moving from Libra into Scorpio will be helpful for facing these tasks or fears, depending on how you want to look at it.
I love that, Kelsey. I happen to know someone, and they have this horoscope. So I'm going to tell an anonymized version of their story of something I know they're going to go through in the next month. They are dealing with older parents who are suddenly having life situations with their health that are radically changing the calculus of my friend's life. They are thus having to figure out which current pieces of their world, from where they live to what they do to everything, will have to be surrendered or sacrificed so that they can more closely serve the death process of their parents, which is not happening immediately, but is going to happen now. It's just a matter of time. So you can feel how that 6th, 12th house calculus during eclipses like this works for an Aries rising with a situation like this. Now, that's pretty extreme. I'm not saying everyone's going to go through something that dire, but a solar eclipse in the 6th house where some measured form of sacrifice or work or duty or service is taking place, and some calculations around what needs to be surrendered or let go of, or what broader realm one has to open oneself to that isn't necessarily easy, but could also be very transformative. I happen to know this person very well, and I know that they won't just see this as a bummer and a duty. They'll see this as an opportunity for heart growth, but it's still heart-wrenching. So something about the 6th and 12th can provide such transformational opportunities, but there's an earthly side to it, and there's an emotional, spiritual side to it, and the two are having a dialogue right now. That's how I'm thinking about this through that one person's story that comes to my mind. But I loved all of the different layers that you gave people to think about, Kelsey. That was really, really nice. Anyone else want to add anything? All right, let's keep rolling. We're going to go to Q next for Taurus rising, which takes these eclipses, lunar eclipse on the 7th in your 11th house, solar eclipse in your 5th on the 21st. And this is my horoscope, so you better do a good job. I'm just kidding.
Ooh.
Give me something good.
Dang, okay, all right. Let me see what I got.
No, I'm playing.
Well, here's the thing. When I looked at the axis for this, I know a couple Taurus risings personally outside of Adam, you know what I'm saying? So I was really kind of just like, as far as reflecting on the communities, because the 11th house has to do with vision casting, networks, communal bonding and belonging, your long-term goals, your fears, your aspirations, these things, right? So where are we seeing illusions or confusion or just a warping of ideologies, of understandings around your hopes and dreams as far as how you belong in community, what it feels like to experience belonging within groups that you once may have held to a certain standard, possibly for yourself, or these are stories that you've been told about certain groups and you have worked towards this, because we do have the North Node here. So there's this calling to this natural interest in this insatiable drive to dig deeper, to swim deeper into the depths of these groups, into these ideologies, these hopes and dreams, right? But with Saturn moving back into this house, I am interested in seeing for them how their identity within these groups starts to crystallize, or the boundaries start to become a little bit clearer as Saturn returns back to this house and provides them this opportunity to address maybe how it is that they've been emerging themselves within these collectives. And if it's spiritually aligned for them, if the frequency is as comfortable as in vibration with them as they previously thought that it could have been, and if there's been some self-sacrificing or surrendering in order to fit within these groups, in order to feel the belonging that they're desiring. We do have Jupiter in Cancer, so this can really exacerbate the homey feeling, the familial desire and drive in wanting to be this part of this group, this spiritual collective. The Tauruses that I know, I think that they've been coming face to face with, if they're a healer because they genuinely believe that they're a healer and genuinely desire to be a healer, or if this is something that's been passed down to them, or they've just been placed in certain groups, or they have some type of ideology towards what it means to be seen as a healer or to be part of this spiritual community. And whether or not this is more performative than I think they knew that they were being. I think that there's really just like this, whoa, like I thought that I was doing something. I thought that I was amongst a group of people or a part of this collective, that I don't know if I need to either shift my position or I just need to reassess how I want to be spiritually connected and in community and part of the network. Now, I think that if we look at the solar, I don't know if you all can hear the alarms here. Maybe this is really important for Taurus risings, but pay attention to this part. There we go. I live next to a hospital, so it gets a little loud sometimes. But with the solar eclipse, I think happening in Virgo, what I feel like if we lean into the other axis, the other side of this axis, and you're being authentic in the things that bring you joy, the 5th house has a lot to do with like the spark of life. Actually engaging in joy, the spiritual essence of what it means to experience happiness and creation. We have the sun finds its joy in this house. And so there's this very like just spiritual intellect of what it is that aligns your spirit to what revitalizes you. And I think with Virgo being here, sometimes there can be too much distilling, too much like, am I doing joy right? Am I experiencing happiness correctly? Is it the right type of level of joy or, sensual pleasures that I'm supposed to be engaging in? And it can be a little strict, a little tight here. So I think that if we're leaning into like, let's refine our ideas of what it means to experience joy, to experience pleasure, to play, and not dim the spark of life that exudes naturally from this house.
Mm.
I think Virgo can overparent here, and either you're overparenting yourself and not allowing yourself to have experiences, to engage in certain type of relationships. We have like one night stands here. The Taurus risings that I know that have this placement tend to always be like, but is that right? Or like, if I'm trying to meet somebody, I want it to be really deep. Like I want them to read the book of who I am. And it's just like, but you're at a party. We're throwing it back. Nobody's about to ask you about, your spiritual beliefs and like where you trying to love that, right? Love that. But like also, and there's a time and place, and like allow yourself to kind of just be free right now and feel like be fully embodied. I think like in my notes here, I have like, you're getting it right before trying to share your joy. So if you have any creative pursuits, projects, because what you're doing when you really align yourself to what it is you're spiritually enjoying, you're going to find the right collective, the right community belonging that's spiritual. Is going to be spiritually aligned once you tap into how you are spiritually giving and being spontaneous and allowing your spark of like life, the fire within you, to be felt by those around you. Fully, Virgo is like the mother and the child. So if you are the joy within yourself and you provide joy and you nurture others with joy, you're going to naturally attract and realign yourself with the right community, the right like network of people. So that's kind of what I was saying for Taurus risings. I try not to be too harsh on them because I know they've beaten themselves up a little bit already. Yeah.
I love it. That's so accurate. That's so good. So appropriate. Yes. Yeah, a couple of things that come to my mind. One of them is going to be that, I mean, and I'm reflecting on this from the standpoint of the experiences that I've had already with the nodes moving through this space. One of them is one of the things, because I've been teaching this masterclass series this year on the Indian philosophical meanings behind the houses. So it's just so baked into me this year to be thinking about them this way. And the 11th house is this place of pleasure, like the Kama Sutra, bliss, happiness, pleasure, but it's socially, publicly, and often professionally oriented. So it has to be conditioned in some ways by the collective. It's like, what does happiness look like around groups, communities, social or professional circles? Whereas that 5th house, that Dharma house, is connected to the joy of one's individual essence. And so, and the two are opposed because it's a tough tension to hold, right? It's like, well, my social, public level of happiness is not always on the same page as my private, personal, creative essence. You can't do one at the cost of the other. You're going to be unhappy. So I've been reflecting a lot on what that means for me as an individual and a creative, but as a personal professional that exists within the astrological field. For example, it was really, really hard for me. I know this is kind of a stupid, silly example, but it's a big one in my world. I have wanted to lead a retreat for a long time, but I've been very cautious about it because one of the things I love about our online programs is that they're accessible. You have a retreat, it's exclusive, it's limited. You can't have so many people because there's costs involved in a retreat center and booking it out and blah, blah, blah. And so that North Node in the 11th, I was like, yeah, but I just want to do this. This is like, I can't, like there has to be some allowance for this. And that is like this recalibrating of personal and professional levels of happiness that are in dialogue. And, the Virgo part of me is very concerned, very personal for me to be concerned with things like accessibility and service to people. The Pisces in the 11th is like, but I really want to do a group retreat in Mexico, Not surprisingly, these things came to a head when the nodes entered these houses. So that's just a silly example for me, which is really not that big of a deal, but has been, like you said, Q, like the pressure that I place on myself personally can be just really almost like puritanical at times with the Virgo piece in my 5th for sure. So there's been a lot of good things to meditate on. You wouldn't believe how many hours of therapy I spent talking about whether or not to have a retreat. It's pretty silly, actually. But anyway, that's how I was kind of applying what you were saying as you were talking. I was thinking about that. But I love the way you broke that down. That was just wonderful. Okay, let's keep rolling. We're going to go forward to Gemini, and Emily's got air signs. We've got the solar eclipse or the lunar eclipse in the 10th house, solar eclipse on the 4th. That's the 7th and 21st of September.
Yeah, so I'm looking at these really as a pair, as more so than individually, and these are angular houses, right? These are in all of your recent breakdowns, Adam, where you've been doing those the four main areas of life that people often come to you to talk about when you're in consultation space. These are two of them, right? So we have the public work, visibility, reputation, calling in the 10th house, and then of course home, family, roots, foundation, property in the 4th. So what I'm thinking with these eclipses are major beginnings and endings, some shifts. Maybe there's, but it feels very mixed bag to me. Like maybe you've been working for a long time on that promotion, or you've been hoping for this job opening to come up. It's come up, you're applying for it, and you get the job. Like that's a really positive thing. You get the promotion, and that's a 10th house coming to fruition, full moon eclipse, right? But it means you have less time to spend with your family or at home. Or it means that the job is in the town next over and you need to move, and you're committed. You like your home, you like your place. So it has that feeling to me where it's really that mixed bag. Or conversely, you don't get it. You're passed over for the job or the promotion, and that's a bummer. But then you get to spend more time with your family. Or then you're like, well, I was only staying in this location because of my job, and I just lost my job, so I can move, and I've been wanting to move. Something like that. There could definitely be something with family, with parents that come up. This could be the birth of a grandchild or a child even. This could be some kind of shift or change in your parents' health, something like that. I'm also thinking of the 2nd and the 3rd houses here, because Cancer is your 2nd of resources, and 3rd is the community, local environment, siblings, extended family, neighbors. And these are the two signs that are ruled by our luminaries that are being eclipsed in this series. So this kind of doubles down for me on the work, career, and home and family. There could be something with siblings. There could be something with, a change in your local neighborhood. That's all stemming around public and private life. And if you're not in the work sector, I'm thinking last year, actually around the first Pisces eclipse in September, I joined my kids' school board. It was like a shift in my public visibility, that the community is seeing me now as one of the 7 members of our school board. So something like that is shifting for you or coming online. Something that maybe has had some history. You've been working for this promotion, you've been working for this change that you either get or don't. But just showing up within public, private sector of life, professional versus family, roots, moves, anything like that. Kind of basic keyword, but that's really how I'm seeing this for Geminis.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I would look at would be when shifts in the external world provide a new form of mirroring for things that are maybe more private or secret or internal, or when shifts internally offer clear points of differentiation publicly.
Yeah.
I think, for example, the classic midlife crisis archetype, sometimes that tears families apart. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it means job changes. Sometimes it means relocations. Sometimes it means completely redefining your life path in general. Why? It's usually because something about the conventional forms of life that I have to show up as in the world, which in the 10th house, even though we think about that as career, can be titles that we are socially married to. You know, I'm a husband, I'm a worker, I'm an employee, I'm a dad, I'm whatever it is. I'm thinking of, you know, some of my own. And then something shifts inside and we go, yeah, but there's these other parts of me that don't get any space because I'm so duty bound to these things that in turn, a realm of arta, right? They grant me money, they grant me security, they grant me resources, etc. So the midlife moment is a very 10th house, 4th house moment for a lot of people, even if it doesn't lead to massive destructiveness. It's just there's a space in midlife where a lot of these roles are really well established, and there has to be this balance between the inner life that is separate or apart from or doesn't cohere to that outer life. And if there's not, that's when the problems often begin. So it seems like for Geminis, some exploration of inner and outer realities are at play.
Yeah. Love that. And I love that 45 midlife is a 10th house perfection year. too.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Cancer. And Mal has our water signs. We have the lunar eclipse on the 7th in your 9th house. And we have the solar eclipse in the 3rd, if you're a Cancer, on the 21st.
Yeah, awesome. And you guys will have to forgive me if I'm a little bit biased because I'm reading my own horoscope right off the bat here. I'm a Cancer rising. But we've got the eclipses hitting the 3rd house of the local environment and then the 9th house, which is the foreign environment. And I was meditating on the vibe of this eclipse, and I couldn't help but think of one of my favorite movies directed by Tim Burton. It's called Big Fish. And I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's a movie that I recommend actually
Great
my
movie.
tarot students to watch because I think it represents the major arcana really well in some ways. But anyways, Big Fish, it's about this guy. He's kind of grappling with a lot of ancestral stories. He leaves home to go on an adventure, which is very 9th house. At some point on his adventure, he actually visits this little town where no one ever leaves. And within this little town where no one ever leaves, there's like this poet. And at some point, our main character reads the poet's poetry, and it's revealed to him that the poetry's really bad. And it's like, oh, well, duh. Yeah, the town's poet, his poetry is really bad because he's never left town. You know, like he's never given himself the experience to take in anything else. All he knows is his own environment, his local environment, the 3rd house. And thus he might lack inspiration, experience, just even the sort of viewpoint of others. So I think there's some tension and opportunity for expansion, especially Cancer risings with Jupiter transiting the 1st house right now as well. Like, you know, what are the beliefs or the teachings that I picked up in my local environment? And how may I now transmute those beliefs and go into a whole new sort of experience, have my own original experience? I'm also kind of weirdly obsessed with like cults and people escaping like Scientology or, you know, really intense Mormonism, you know, sort of groups. But there's always a point in those books where the person who is escaping has some sort of aha moment and thinks, this isn't me, or this isn't my God, or this belief just fundamentally doesn't make sense to me, and I have to go and find my own way. Even if you're not a Cancer rising escaping a cult, you know, there's something here about going and finding your own way. One more thing I'll add, I'm experiencing quite a literal manifestation of this end of the month, I'm kind of giving up my lease in Chicago. I live in an apartment that I love in a neighborhood that I love in Chicago, which is very third house. But I'm giving it up because I need to place myself in a leaseless zone so I can jump to potentially moving abroad in the next 6 months to a year, which is also paired with the eclipse cycles. So there's a ton of grief, I think, coming up with leaving Chicago. A lot of my friends are here. I have an astrology community here. The dog I walk, you can see in the background. Of course, I'll miss him. There's a lot of grief with letting go of the local environment, but also some hopefulness in maybe what is to come in a life that I've really dreamed about for a long time, which is about living abroad. So yeah, that's what I got.
I love it. That's so nice. And I think you hit on so many different points of relevance there, but I love that as we clarify our own desires and our own interests and our own nature psychologically, that it plays an important role in the developing understanding that we have of reality, the gods, divinity. Truth does not exclude our individual subjective level of experience. It also isn't limited by it. It's not beholden to it, but it also doesn't exclude it. And so something about that third house, ninth house axis, someone born with the sun and moon, across this axis natally, I reflect on how my faith evolves at a lot of key moments when I understand myself and my own nature a little bit more deeply, that it becomes the gateway through which I understand something a little bit more deeply, that feels outside of me at the same time. So anyway, that thought came to my mind, but thank you, Mal. That was just so nice. And I can only imagine the scenario you're in, and it completely makes sense for the eclipses. It's interesting because my wife's a Cancer rising, and a lot of what she's been going through has been she's been really fascinated by ancient goddess cults, and she's been reading about them, and that's been a pathway for her to explore different aspects of herself. So it's been very third, ninth house like that. And I anticipate that there'll probably be more interesting developments along that pathway for her with these eclipses, also Cancer rising. All right, let's go to Leo. We're moving back to fire. Kelsey's up again. We've got the lunar eclipse in the 8th house on the 7th, and then the solar eclipse in the 2nd house on the 21st.
All right. So Leos, you guys have had a big summer. So welcome to the next phase of that. I think that as a Leo, being ruled by the sun, eclipses are very important, just like Cancer risings as well, being ruled by the moon. So happening in the 2nd and 8th houses, this is about the give and take. It can be about financial worth versus cost, gains, trades, income, security. And I also think a lot about just trust, and just having emotional closeness, as well as the ability to trust and collaborate with people, whether you're sharing your time, money, energy, resources, or secrets. So this is making me think a lot about how there's something changing about you personally because of the things that you are deciding to no longer be invested in, or to become invested in, or become more invested in. So I'm thinking about letting go of fears in doing so with the total lunar eclipse in Pisces, ruled by Jupiter in your 12th. So maybe there's a lot of facing some fears here, And I think, I do have my nodes in these houses, opposite actually, but let me just say it's so important to balance these out, guys. So, you gotta have some sort of system with yourself, and it can be with the lunar phases if that works for you, but to just make sure, like, am I giving too much or am I taking too much? What's the balance here? And I think that in seeing yourself differently through what you're devoted and attached to, it helps you become more capable of being that sunlight for other people, being that Leo sun. You guys are known for your confidence, but you can't really be confident if you're feeling drained. And if you feel that there are pieces of you that are being outsourced, or I think for Leos, this could be a lot about drawing your energy back in and being intentional again about where you want to put that energy. Boundaries are super important with Pisces in the eighth house. And that eclipse, I think you could be feeling like almost a draw to move in closer to that boundlessness so that you can understand why you need boundaries. So I think that can happen a lot with the Pisces North Node, no matter what sign you are, is we could be kind of like, yeah, really moving towards that North Node hunger just to realize the importance of having some sort of boundary or having some sort of ending here. Financially, too, this could be about changes going on, letting go of one way of making money and starting a new chapter. I know of one particular Leo rising that I've read for a long time, and they've been wanting to move forward into a new job, a new career path. And well, I do think that Uranus entering Gemini and leaving Taurus had a lot to do with it too. This is like the healing part for this person of like, okay, I'm drawing my energy back of those years being overworked. And now being able to choose what skills and talents with that second house Virgo that you want to perfect and that you want to use to bring yourself security and a sense of material safety in the world. So yeah, I think as a Leo rising, having a sense of understanding where you're putting your energy and where you're investing in can help you to feel a little bit more confident. And that discernment is a strength that you'll carry through this eclipse cycle.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that always comes to my mind when eclipses land in the eighth house are either the completion of or the revision of various agreements that we have, some of which are emotional, karmic in ways that are not always conscious or obvious. But there's almost always a harvesting of soul contract material with eclipses in the eighth. The benefits, the blessings, the breaking of curses, the removing of debts. And then some question about an evaluation of one's own resources in relation to what's going out or what's being agreed upon, the exchanges. Yeah, really interesting stuff. Anyone want to add anything to that before we go on?
I'll just say quickly, I know a Leo rising who recently moved because of their partner's job, which is very eighth house. And they had to get a new job, which is second house. But in getting their new job, they actually realized, I don't even really want to do this anymore. And this person also happens to be an astrology student. And they're kind of in the phase of accepting, like, I want to be an astrologer. But there's a lot of second house stuff to let go of. Not even money stuff, more like self-value. We all know this story, right? Because we've been in it. So I just wanted to give that quick example that, there could be some realizations of what I truly do want to be doing with my time.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. And I always want to mention this just because it's so true for my experiences, is that sometimes the second house can have a lot to do with family stuff. And I think that makes sense because of the stuff we get from our family. And Mal, you mentioned about like worthiness and all of that. I think that's coming up a lot for Leo people as you have this like creative renaissance of a summer. It's really important to let go of the need to feel like it's coming out in this perfect way. And I think a lot of that can, I'm not assuming anything, but sometimes that does come from family or from things we experience as we're growing up. And I think Jupiter in your 12th house is really helping you become aware and heal those things. So, yeah, just wanted to add that.
Nice. Well, we move into our Virgo Pisces axis on the 1st and 7th house, and that's for Virgo risings. You got the solar eclipse in your first. So the first lunar eclipse will be on the 7th in your 7th, and then on the 21st, the solar eclipse in the 1st house. Q, what do you got for us with this one?
Ooh, Virgo risings. When I was sitting with these houses, I really saw there being some understanding and realizations around connections, your one-on-one connections, because the 7th house is those one-on-one relationships that you're making, whether they be platonic, romantic, business-wise. But it's also the house of like the self-reflection of yourself, like what energy you see reflected back in the people that you make connections with, those relationships. What are they reflecting back to you as far as who you are, how you express yourself, what your desires are, what are you attracting to yourself? That is a projection of the self. So with Pisces being here, I think that there can sometimes be like an enmeshment that can occur for Virgo risings in this house. We know that Virgo can work off of the potentiality of a thing. And so if there has been this overabundance or this pull and calling with the North Node being there for you to emerge yourself with the other, to submit. And we talked earlier with Mallory saying how like there's this martyrdom that can happen with Virgo risings, kind of always showing up for the other person, showing up for these other things outside of themselves, and kind of busying themselves with what's outside of them. And getting lost in the sea, as Pisces can often do and experience, as far as just like going too far out to sea for people, and what's happening within the self. That first house is being a bit neglected, and it could be for martyrdom's sake, that you're like, oh, I'm serving, I'm showing up as a servant. I see mothers potentially. A lot of the Virgos that are coming to mind happen to be mothers as well. And that can very easily become something that they are like, well, my kids need this, where my community needs this, where my family, my husband, these roles, these obligations, these responsibilities that you have created through being in relationship to the other, is pulling you away from the self. So I think that potentially there might be some things that come up, emotional or like things from the memory that are expressed in relationship from other people, or maybe you're just realizing that the relationships that you're in aren't as comfortable or as spiritually satisfying. They're not, they're not coming back on the things that they promised, that you would reap if being in relationship with them was something you desired. You're like, I am not getting what I thought I was promised stepping into this, but I have been giving and giving and surrendering and surrendering. I've lost myself. So I do see that there could be this potentiality where you see a relationship, but you're like, am I willing to give up myself for this? But if I do give up myself, is it parts of myself that I need to actually let go and surrender to the spiritual abyss of like alchemization? Like, how do I allow for this relationship to strengthen me and grow within me an inner knowing of self? I think that if you kind of are finding yourself in a position where you're like, no, I desire these relationships, but there's something I must let go if I'm going to healthily be in relationship, if I'm going to be in complete harmony with not only myself, but those outside of myself, what do I need to allow to be let go? in order to succeed in that. In other ways, though, you could find that, oh, this is like way too much for me to handle. I'm getting lost completely. I need to go back to my Virgo roots. And again, that Virgo is the mother and the child. So I need to mother myself. I need to find an inner sanctuary that is spiritually grounding and self-sustaining. And in that way, I will attract what relationships actually have me spiritually ascending in a way that is comfortable and nurturing and self-satisfying, but also is serving the whole and not just myself. Virgos deeply want to be healthy and like healing to the environment that they find themselves in, but you must not get lost in those relationships or environments, in those duties. I think that this is a really pivotal time for Virgos to kind of realize, oh, there's something within me that I need to return back to and get familiar with. That's going to be completely transformative to the identity of who you are, how you express yourself, how you move in the world around you. That's the energy that I was picking up for Virgo risings for these eclipses.
Love that. Yeah, I think the self-other access is so powerful as we review and revisit and revise and reflect on who we are and where we're at in a very personal way. It immediately has this echoing or immediate reflectiveness within key relationships and vice versa. And there's a big passage right now for that. Even my daughter, who's a Virgo rising, I've noticed in her friendships, her close friendships, is doing a lot of reflecting for a while now since the nodes entered. But this is probably a powerful time for that as she's going back to school in September, and new classmates, new people, new situations, also coming into a new phase of development and growth, as a fourth grade girl. And so it's fascinating how this can show up and really in all stages of life, all phases of life. We never complete this process. So yeah, that was a really beautiful delineation. Thank you, Q. For the sake of time, since we all love to talk, we are going to roll on to Libra. And hold on just a second here. Can you see Libra on the ascendant? There we go. Okay. Emily, you have this one. We're flipping things now. We've got the solar eclipse in the 12th, the lunar eclipse in the 6th. For Libras, it was the opposite for our Aries.
So the first Virgo eclipse in this series that happened in March of this year, the eclipse fell right smack in the middle of about a 10 or 12 day stretch in which 4 out of the 5 members of my immediate family, I have 3 kids, so there are 5 of us here in the house, came down with a stomach bug. It just kind of slow rolled through our family over about 10, 11 days. And my older daughter, who's my middle child, is a Libra rising with a Sun-Jupiter conjunction in Virgo in the 12th. And she and I share a phobia of vomit. It's an actual clinical thing called emetophobia. You can look it up. It's more common than you think. Anyway, I share this story because I think it really exemplifies the potential for the 6th, 12th axis, right? The discomfort, the challenge, the stressful situation of being physically ill in the 6th was one thing, she got through that. But the psychological fear and the feeling of being unsafe in her own body, in her own home, amongst her own family, very 12th house, like these subconscious programming that we have that we don't even realize how much they might be dictating or running our lives from behind the scenes. So this is just one example of one way that this axis, I think, can show up. Obviously, not every Libra rising is going to get sick, but something like that, a situation that is challenging, stressful, uncomfortable, that feels acute, perhaps, or has been coming to a head, with that Pisces full moon eclipse that with some history behind it, a fruition moment of something coming to the head in the 6th house of, misfortune or self-sacrifice or efforts that activates, for whatever reason, some deep subconscious behind the scenes programming or patterns that we have that we need to look at and work through and see, like, I no longer want to be undermined in this way by these deeply held feelings and thoughts that I have. And I think another way that I'm thinking about this for Libras is that, so many Libras are really, they're people pleasers, right? They keep the peace, they keep the harmony, they want to keep things beautiful and balanced. And what do you have in your 6th house of self-sacrifice and effort, but a very compassionate, empathic, sometimes lacking boundaries sign of Pisces, right? And so I wonder if for some Libra risings that something is coming to a head here. You're realizing, I can't keep bending over backward. And this has been echoed, in other ways. We were just talking about it. Q was saying it with the Virgo rising too. I cannot keep giving of myself in a way to make other people feel comfortable, to make other people feel balanced and harmonious and happy. And then by the time we get to that anoretic solar eclipse on the south node in your 12th house, I know sometimes I think about with the 12th house, it's a place of ego death, right? It's falling away from the first. And maybe whatever's coming to a head around where you have been overgiving in the 6th is allowing you to say, it's time for me to let go of that attachment that I have to that part of my identity that keeps the peace, that maintains the balance and is a pleaser. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about for Libra risings. Maybe you're overworked and you decide you need to go to a silent retreat or something, that could work too. But something along this axis of something coming to a head around overgiving that you need to let go of always maintaining the balance.
I love that. That's really nice. Some nice touch there with the 12th and 6th dynamics, given the tendencies of Libra, I think. I really like that. I wonder, I did a talk, I think it was this year. God, I can't remember now. I did a talk on the 12th house. And one of the things that I did was I looked at the juxtaposition between rising signs and 12th house signs on an archetypal level to say, for example, how does Virgo constitute a blind spot for Libra? Mm-hmm. Just thinking about it that way was an interesting exercise for this talk. I think one of the things that, sometimes there's in the external appearance of grace, beauty, balance, fairness, so that social thoughtfulness and sensibility that Libra has is some more rigid and maybe even puritanical level of like an algebra or a social calculus that's going on behind the scenes. And sometimes that calculus needs reconfiguring. It's like the way that you're judging, evaluating, discerning, discriminating, you may not even be aware of the formulas that you have in that spreadsheet, mm-hmm. or you may not be aware of how they're influencing how you try to be seen, or what I like about the adjustment of the calculus in the 12th house right now for Libras is that it could be coming because of things that overwhelm and flood, like North Node, 6th house kinds of transits that flood your capacity to control material circumstances through careful evaluation and discrimination. And when those floodings happen, then there's an opportunity for new information to recalibrate your equations. I don't think Libras live without equations. I don't think it's bad to live with equations, but sometimes they need to go from like algebra to quantum computing. There needs to be a more maybe even mystical or emotional or artistic levels of awareness that start informing some of the behind the scenes faculties of judgment or discernment. So that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying for the sake of time, and look at me blab on, let's go on to Scorpio rising. Mal is going to take us here. And while Mal is talking, I'm just going to run and refill my cup of tea because I'm making sure I'm taking care of my throat. It's been really wet here, and I always tend to get a sore throat if I'm not careful. So I'm going to go do that while Mal talks to us about Scorpio rising, which is our solar eclipse in the 11th, lunar eclipse in the 5th.
Yeah, okay. Well, Scorpio rising, we have the eclipses, like Adam said, highlighting the 5th house of creativity, pleasure, joy, and the 11th house of groups and networks. I thought it was funny because in the past couple days, we saw Taylor Swift announce that she's going to release a new album, and I am a Swiftie, and I do think that Taylor Swift is a Scorpio rising. I know there's a little bit of discord if she's a Scorpio rising or Sagittarius rising. I'm very pro. I really think she's a Scorpio rising. But anyways, I was just thinking about her in context of this eclipse, like this sort of universal, like the biggest star in the world in some ways, like bigger than the Beatles. She announcing a new album release, which is very 5th house, is also probably filled with a lot of shadow because you have so many fans and people listening to your artwork. And on the one hand, you could spend all day worrying about how the new album and, the new lore, the new era is being received. And then I was thinking, though, she has to be somewhat beyond that part of her artistry. Like, to be as big as she is, there had to have been some more intense shadow work around the releasing of a project, what people think, how people are going to judge it, and just kind of arriving at a happiness and a contentment with the creative project that is being revealed, just within your own self, right? So that's what I think some of the Scorpio risings might be grappling with, like this tension between my uniqueness, my creative project, the book I'm writing, the art I'm making, and even maybe a lesson with, well, I don't know if it really matters what people think, or it's cathartic in itself to just release it because it's me. And if I'm happy with it, then, to hell with everything else. I also think that the 5th house covers topics around intimacy and pleasure. And I think there could be some lessons just for maybe a handful of Scorpio risings about maybe facing the fear of intimacy and our subconscious defense mechanisms that keep us from vulnerability. Like, if a Scorpio rising is stuck constantly picking emotionally unavailable partners or even friends, this eclipse could also reveal something about that pattern. And it's, kind of, I was talking about Taylor Swift earlier. So to use one of her lyrics, like, I'm the problem, it's me. Like, there's a little bit of like, why am I surrounding myself with these people that make me feel like I can't be intimate or vulnerable? A partner who's not capable of holding my emotional expansiveness, etc., etc. So I think there's a lot of shadow work, actually, Scorpio risings in the 5th house, even if this tends to be a happy, happy, joy, joy house, like, woohoo, I'm going to win the lottery. I also think we often carry a lot in our hearts when it comes to the things we love and the things that make us vulnerable. Yeah.
I caught the tail end while I was refilling my tea. Thank you letting me step out for a second. There we are again with that equation of, what facets of my public, professional, social life are needing some shift or change for the sake of greater fulfillment or happiness. But then how does that align with a more generative, personal, creative force within me? So that conversation for Scorpios, I think, really important right now. My sister's a Scorpio rising, and I know that this is part of, it's a big question. I'll just put it this way. It's a big question when your lifestyle is changing, rooted in health and happiness. You have to make decisions about what social settings are conducive to continuing to really nourish not just your happiness, but your health. She's, of course, most people know this. I've shared this before. She's coming off from having had a stroke. She's been rehabbing and then having to reconfigure, like, what can I do? Well, you can't, I mean, just, I don't think she'd care if I share this. Like, it's not as conducive to drink, right? Like, that's like, you have to be a little bit more careful. So when social scenes are filled with people doing that, it's like, it's not that there's a problem with those people necessarily, but you have to figure out, how do I show up and be in certain new places and scenes in life when these kinds of things are happening? That and many other things that go into a new phase of life that's about your health and well-being. She's been dealing with that. I've been really proud of her and all the work she's been doing as a Scorpio rising on that level. Anyway, really nice horoscope like that. Let's move on to Sagittarius. We've got solar eclipse in your 10th, lunar eclipse in the 4th, lunar eclipse on the 7th, solar eclipse on the 21st.
All right. So for Sag risings, these are mutable eclipses. So much like Gemini rising people, this is going to be in, the angular houses, and you're going to perhaps see this play out in many areas of your life. I think that having an eclipse with, Pisces involved with eclipses, it's I think for Sag people can be very deep. You're getting to know a new emotional side to yourself. You may even have some challenges that you're dealing with involving family, the past, nostalgia. There could be some grief and loss going on as well. So I want to be sensitive to that. And I hope that Saggies, as well as really any of the fire signs, with these happening in the 12th, with Cancer in the 12th, 8th, or 4th. I think there's a lot of deep healing for these fiery signs, having to kind of like put some water on the flames and kind of see what's left, when you have that emotional release. I think that the 8th house, Jupiter ruling the 4th eclipse, can be like letting go of some patterns from your past. And there might be a lot of attention right now on your 4th house, your private life, whether it's with family, with your physical home, your past, or just your own emotional self. That Saturn retrograde back into your 4th, I think about it like, okay, Saturn's going back. Why? For all of us, I often end the day like, why is Saturn going back?
That's great.
So I think it's important to really think about that. This is the root of your chart. And not to mention, we've got the solar eclipse with the south node at the top of your chart. So something is really changing publicly or about your status. That could be about relationships with Uranus in your 7th. I just went through that. So buckle up and get ready to really learn from the people in your life. And I think that what does that do? It changes how people see you. So this could be about work also, but it could just be about how you are changing in the world. And I think that because Jupiter is your chart ruler and it rules that first eclipse on the 7th, it's kind of like opening up this window, and as a Sag rising, you're that free spirit, but you have the 10th house of Virgo. So you're like, but I want to be perfect and free. So it's like, you kind of have to like that tension, that square, it involves some transformation. When do we ever change unless there's some tension? So I think that this eclipse cycle, this pairing, it is critical with that 29 degree. And it's about, if I let go of some things, what am I capable of if I let go of that worry? And what if I tend to the more emotional depths of who I am? How free can I be? What new things can I actually accomplish in my career if I let go? So, and I also want to say too, like, I know we're not talking about Mars, but I think Mars moving into Scorpio will be a big deal too in September. So I think maybe for Sag risings too, this kind of like helps you out with letting those things go as it enters your 12th. But yeah, I think for all my fire signs that heard your horoscopes today, just like give yourself the grace to like do things in a way that's not perfect, like perfectly imperfect, I think anyone this during this time in history can relate that not a lot of things like make sense right now. So it's good to like allow that divine trust to carry you through eclipse season. That's what it's about, right? Letting fate take the reins, and we'll get involved in October.
Nice. Yeah, I like this as an interesting time for new professional developments. Even I think of retired people and just what engages you with the larger world still, and what changes are happening there, as opposed to private, internal, and family dynamics. Sages are also weighing all of this against very new material entering the house of love and relationships with Uranus there. So that comes to my mind. But anyway, we are running out of time, so I need to speed us along a little bit. Let's go to Capricorns next, where we have the lunar eclipse in your 3rd, solar eclipse in your 9th. Q's going to round us out on the earth signs here.
Yes, Capricorns. So we have, like Adam said, the 9th and the 3rd house kind of coming up for us here. And really what I saw here was, or what I was thinking about was inherited stories that you might have been told, or you just witnessed being performed around you in that local area, because the 3rd house again is about like your mental frameworks, your local reality, and just like your speech. So, or writing as well. So it's just like, what forms of language, of belief, of thought, what mental frameworks were created and passed down to you for survival's sake, and what might need to be shed now in order for you to live a more spiritually aligned and self-sovereign reality and spiritual lifestyle as well. I think that if there are things like, or people like siblings, friends, coworkers, people that are just like, that you see on a daily basis, that are just like in your local reality, that may bring forth some type of messages of alignment or misalignment spiritually. It could be that you're just wanting to expand your spiritual experience or your spiritual connection, and you're not feeling fulfilled where you are. So that 3rd house is like asking for more with that node, and maybe perhaps you haven't been feeling just so on the ball with it. You're like, this is truthful, but it's holding me back, or it's keeping me in a form of fear or illusion about what type of lifestyle I could be living, what type of truth I could be living by. The 9th house is like the truth seekers awakening. So it's just like you're having these downloads, these understandings. Mercury being in Virgo is really providing you this heightened sense of discernment for what actually works for you, and what potentials you want to actually pursue going forward in this realm of higher education, of universal truths, of travel, of mentors that will come into your life and provide you this new insight. You could really be finding yourself going and moving away from what past generations may have been too afraid to question or dig into and inquire about. And you will find yourself wanting to gather the materials and sift through what actually works for you and what you want to keep close as you move forward in this new sense of spiritual self. I think with Jupiter being in the 7th house in Cancer, you could find that your one-on-one relationships that you're forming, that Jupiter is kind of expanding on and providing fertile ground for you to find familiarity or like comfort to explore these new spiritual beliefs or understandings of self as you move forward. So definitely lean into like any new relationships that I think might be coming up where you're like, oh, wow, that's really interesting that you say that. Like, tell me more. I'm really intrigued to like know where you got that knowledge from and like maybe how I can apply it for my life personally. I don't think that you should just abandon all that you've been informed by in that 3rd house, but I do think that is potentially a good time to just like sit down with it and really reframe how you are setting up your mental understandings around what it means to be spiritual and spiritually led in this life. I think that those are things that Capricorn will be seeing them out in and trying to figure out what steps to take to climb up this spiritual understanding of self, sovereignty moving forward. So generally that's, I want to say that's all my notes on Capricorn risings for right now. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Only thing I'll add is just that I think there's such an opportunity here for that personal, emotional, subjective realm to play a role in an unfolding of, let's call it objective, rational, scientific, metaphysical understanding of the 9th house.
Yeah.
So Capricorns are like, you know, they're often like engineers building, you know, these amazing, I don't know, projects, and they have such a mind for the design and the long view of it. But knowing in my own dad as a Capricorn rising, knowing how important it is for the inner emotional subjective level of reality to inform the way your design is unfolding, you know, and your understanding. That's really important. So there's some overlap there that I think is really promising for Caps right now. Okay, we've got 2 left. Let's go to Emily for Aquarius rising, lunar eclipse on the 7th in the 2nd, solar eclipse in Virgo in the 8th house on the 21st.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I was thinking of saying, Kelsey already covered when we were talking about Leo rising, right? But this is the axis of resources. And of course, we always think of actual income and possessions, but also energy, time, right? That's the saying, right? Time is money. So whatever that resource is about that fuels you, I think of food as also being here in the 2nd house. Like, what are you consuming? What are you bringing in that is fueling you, is resourcing you? And, you know, Saturn has been in this house for about 2.5 years, save a few months here in the summertime when it had moved into Aries. I'm wondering if, you know, this lunar eclipse isn't, maybe you've been working hard at developing a skill. You've been working on a trade program, or you've been working in an internship. You've been working hard, putting in the time, developing the skill, but not seeing a lot of reward yet. Maybe this is the time when you've earned their certificate, right? It's time for you to get the job that after the unpaid internship, something like that. maybe you've been spending a lot of time on your diet and what you're putting into your body, and maybe over the summer you kind of got lax with it when Saturn moved out of this house, and something comes to a head here when you have that Pisces eclipse in the second house, that you're like, "Ooh, I need to get back to figuring out, get serious about how I'm resourcing myself, get serious about what I'm putting in my body or what skills I'm developing." With the eighth house, of course, there's the connection with how we're enmeshed with other people, what they owe us, what we owe them. I love your analogy, Adam, about the cosmic or the karmic blood bank in this house. Um, this very much feels like something could be shifting for a partner's resources. This feels like potentially, if you have a relative that needs care, a loved one that you're caring for, either you have to start caring for them and giving a lot of your time and energy to care for them, or perhaps maybe they're getting better and you no longer need to give that much of your energy, or they're moving into a home. It's time to move them into a home and you're freed up from all of that care. Anything along this axis of what you are giving, what you are receiving, and that can be time, money, energy, emotional support, all of those things. We're looking at also Cancer and Leo, because these are the houses ruled by our eclipsed luminaries. That's your 6th and 7th. This feels like, one specific example that obviously will not be the case for many of our Aquarius risings, but you or a partner gets injured at work and you need to go on disability, something like that. This feels like a 6th, 7th addition, 6th, 7th houses addition to the second 8 axis. So really, I think, though, on an archetypal level, this feels like a moment of deep soul searching around what you value. I know that values can be found anywhere in the chart, but when you're thinking about, one way to look at what you are valuing is what you spend your money on, what you invest in. That shows what you actually value, what you're willing to invest in. And I think for some Aquariuses, there's a real sense of bondedness to their beliefs or attachment to their convictions. And this might be a period of time when we're doing some soul searching around, what do we actually believe? What am I willing to invest in? What is worth my time? What is worth my energy? What is worth my money? And maybe there needs to be some shifts in how I am valuing things and how I am investing in those values. That is coming up for some Aquarius risings right now.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting to me because obviously my 7-year-old daughter is not evaluating karmic contracts at some really conscious level, but she's an Aquarius rising. And one thing that I've noticed is since the South Node moved into her 8th house, she's gone through several processes of willingly and of her own initiative purging her toys. She'll just say, I don't want this. I don't need this. I don't want this anymore. And both my wife and I have been like, well, what's that about? It's kind of interesting. And I was reflecting on the fact that she's got the South Node in the 8th and she's evaluating what is worth staying attached to and what isn't. So even 7-year-olds, on this kind of level are working through questions like this. I find that so interesting to watch how it shows up in the chart of a small person, still a soul with history. So it shows up in ways that are not as operatic as our midlife experiences, but still powerful. Anyway, we are on to our last sign. And that is Pisces. Mal's gonna bring us home here. We've got the lunar eclipse in your 1st house on the 7th and the solar eclipse in the 7th on the 21st.
Yeah, I'm excited for you, Pisces risings, even though it's like a really intense energy. I mean, you and the Virgo risings are the ones who are probably feeling the eclipse cycle the most in some ways. But I'm thinking about, again, the Piscean karma towards service, and the South Node, though, being in the seventh house of the other. So, this is the node that tends to be a little bit more shadowy, a little bit filled with some of our karmic baggage, maybe things we're repeating from a past life. And I'm thinking about even like past lives where we didn't fulfill what we wanted to do because we were distracted by the other. Um, let's say I really wanted to go to college and go to school, but my partner was really sick. So being their caretaker kept me from doing that. And then in this lifetime, there's a little bit of a redo, but yet there's also that behavioral pattern of like, I'm so willing to sacrifice myself for the other, which isn't necessarily a bad thing at its core. But there is a reckoning with this eclipse that feels very much like, all right, like when are you going to pick you, which is very first house. And it reminds me of Samantha, Sex in the City, breaking up with her long-term boyfriend and saying, I love you, but I just love me more. So Pisces risings kind of have to have the gumption to say that, even to like a partner that's super aligned, or even their kid that they love more than themselves. Like, it is a little bit of like, hey, honey, I love you, but mommy has to go to the art class at 6 p.m. and we're not going to negotiate because I need to do this for myself. So really reckoning with where people have been, well, I should say where you have been distracting yourself through other people, right? Very low hanging fruit would be someone who keeps jumping from relationship to relationship and is looking for the one, so hard. And this eclipse somehow leads them to saying, you know what? I have to put dating aside for the next 6 months and I have to learn how to date myself, because this whole like, trying to find the one just isn't working for me. Again, not all Pisces risings are going to be going through that, but I could see there being a really deep realization of one's relationship to your own aloneness. Yeah. And I mean aloneness not in an emo way. Like, I mean it in a really profound way, right?
I love the emo way. That's great.
Mallory, stop it. This is like, this eclipse is right on my ascendant and you just spoke to me. Just spoke to me. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think the only other thing that comes to my mind would be, South Node solar eclipse in the 7th in Virgo. For a Pisces rising who at worst can become, what do I want to say, deluded by grandeur, like ideas about self that are very dramatic, overwhelming, kind of cosmic size proportions. It's like the critical or simple or grounded feedback of another soul that says something like, you're trying to be too much, you're trying to do too much. Accept this feedback, or maybe you're going to lose me because you're not balanced and I'm getting tired of being a grounded presence for someone who's overwhelming and exhausting themselves constantly. That's rough. Like, that's not exactly easy to receive. Or another way could be like, if you have a partner who tends to be very critical, and most of the time you have to protect yourself from that criticism because it's not very graceful. It's not tolerant. It's not expansive and open. But how hard is it when that same person at a certain point in time actually has a valid piece of criticism. How do you then open yourself to it without feeling like you're opening yourself to all the other BS? You know, it's like, oh, that's tough. So I could see there being a push and pull between how much of the mirroring of Virgo other is allowed for or tolerated, or how much do we open to, so that our idea of self can be accurately refined and by another person. Whereas the other thing that Mal was saying is like, how do you take more time for yourself and maybe let go of the pressures that other people bring to you? So I think it can go in both directions, and it's going to be really interesting to hear stories from, I have several Pisces Virgo people in my life, so it'll just be interesting to see how it happens.
Stop it, Adam. You too.
Yeah, I know. It's like, yeah, for real. Well, this has been wonderful. I am so glad you're all getting to know of our second month now, our new panelists. I want to make sure that you know how to contact them. So for Q, you can find Q at SensualNoiree on Instagram. And through the bio, there are ways you can get in touch with her for readings. Is that right, Q?
Yes, that's correct. So go ahead over to the bio, y'all.
Yeah, definitely. For Mal, it is at _Mallory Hasty on Instagram. Same thing in the bio. You can find all of her links, book a reading, follow her content, all that good stuff. Do I have that right, Mal?
Yep, and website's the same name, so you guys can find me there.
Perfect. Emily is at Emily T Astrology on Instagram, and then emilytatomer.com for readings website. You can book things there.
Yeah. And
Also,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say the last month, September is my last month with the reading service through Nightlight. So come on over there too.
Yep. Check out the affordable readings tab. She's there as an alumni reader right now for one more month. And then Kelsey is at Metanova Girl on Instagram. Follow her content there. And then astrologyrx.com for readings, booking, things like that. Do I have that right, Kelsey?
Yes, you do.
Okay, excellent. This was awesome. Thank you guys so much. I hope that you will all check out all of these panelists. Their wonderful work. It's exciting to have a new group. And by the way, if you haven't checked it out, the co-hosts that we had last year, Alex, Dana, Whitney, Alexander, are creating weekend bonus content. They've done some really cool things. They did a recent episode giving you eclipse ritual advice, like how to prep for eclipses. So you can check out that bonus content if you want to hear from them, see what they're up to. Yeah, so we will be back again October, November. There's more really interesting astrology. We're going to have planets retrograding back into signs they were in. So this like party that we had over the spring and summer is going to shift directions. We're going back into some real watery spaces this fall. Should be interesting. But yeah, that's it for now. After I sign off, there is an informational video about the retreat in Mexico next June. So check that out. And we will see you all again next month. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.
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 Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm really excited to tell you more about the Oracle Within, the retreat that we'll be hosting in Mexico in June of 2026. So this is a little informational video that I've made to answer all the questions that you might have about the retreat. In this video, I'm going to start by telling you more about what you will learn on the retreat, what the focus of our studies will be, and then I'm going to tell you about our daily format and sort of what day-to-day life will look like at this retreat center outside of the actual material we'll be studying. I'm going to then tell you who this retreat is ideal for, what kind of background you may want to have before coming along. And then finally, I'm going to tell you more about how you can register. And of course, I'll take you over to the actual retreat website page so that you know where all of the information is located. There's also a really rich FAQ section that will probably answer any further questions you may have. On that note, let's start with what will I learn? So for a very long time, astrologers have talked about what astrology is. What is this? Is it some kind of karmic science? Is it a science of causal energies and influences? Is this actually scientific? Like, what order of knowing is astrology? If we say we can know something about reality, then how can we actually say that when it comes to astrology? These may seem like really deep, dense philosophical issues, but actually they're at the heart of what it means to really deepen into astrology, to have an understanding of what this actually is so fundamental and so helpful. Throughout all of the programs that I teach at Nightlight, I, of course, talk at length about my belief that astrology is a form of divination, that this is a language of signs and omens, very much like the tarot or the I Ching or many other systems of symbolic divination from all around the planet. We're going to spend a lot of time on this retreat talking about what astrology is. From a historical and philosophical perspective, what is divination? What is divination, not just in this tradition, but all over the planet? What kind of things does a divinatory view of the cosmos assume about the nature of reality, about the nature of the soul, and what we're actually doing as practitioners when we practice astrology or when we study it or when we use it for ourselves? So one of the teachers that I had that made a huge impact on me, and 12 years ago when Jupiter was last in Cancer, I hosted him for a retreat on astrology as a form of divination, is Jeffrey Cornelius. He wrote this book called The Moment of Astrology, Origins in Divination, which is, in my opinion, one of the best books on astrology ever written. This will be something like a preparatory textbook that a lot of students on the retreat I'll recommend read before you come to this course. Over the program for the course of a full week, in the mornings, we're going to be talking about the history, the metaphysics, the philosophy, the ancient mystics, and what they said about the nature of astrology itself. So we're going to think really deeply about what is astrology. Then in the afternoons, we're going to talk about how to connect with an oracle. Connecting with an oracle, connecting with astrology as a divinatory system, in other words, is about the marriage of intuition and being able to listen to the oracle speak while also utilizing the logic of craft. How do you marry those two things together? It's not something we take a lot of deliberate time to talk about as astrologers. So in the mornings, we're talking about history, philosophy, theory of astrology. In the afternoons, we're going to be talking about how to actually develop a living, vibrant relationship with an oracle so that it's informing how you approach the craft of a reading or how you approach the craft of astrology itself, if it's something that you maybe just use only for you in your own spiritual path. Either way, practitioners, hobby students are all welcome. So a lot of hands-on immersive work with charts, with live clients, with different systems of divination, and talking a lot about how to connect with an oracle experientially in our afternoons, where our mornings will be devoted to theory. It's about 30 to 40 hours worth of content that we'll be doing over the course of a week together, which means this is effectively like one of my advanced training programs condensed into a week. It's brand new material, brand new curriculum, doesn't appear anywhere else in the Nightlight programs, and yet everything that this program includes is really a condensation of the underlying philosophy of astrology itself that is a part of all of the Nightlight programs and all of my work as a whole. And again, most of that was deeply inspired by the work of Jeffrey Cornelius, who's I consider him something of a mentor in my life. So that's a bit about what you will learn. If you have questions about what you will learn, you can feel free to email me for more details, info@nightlightastrology.com. Now, I want to talk about the format of the retreat. When you're on this retreat, first of all, you're in a beautiful sort of jungle beach location near Puerto Vallarta, Mexico for a week, which means we every day will not just be about theory and experiential, immersive, oracular work, which I'm very excited about. I have a ton of really good curriculum written for us as a group to go through. But in the mornings, we're going to have the option of starting your morning with breath work, yoga, meditation. In the evenings, we'll probably cap our days off with a little bit of centering as well. So my wife, Ashley, who I ran a yoga studio with for a decade, will be with me leading daily meditation and yoga. She is an incredibly good yoga teacher, very grounded and very, wherever your level is at, there'll be something there for you. And that's optional as well. So every day you have a little meditation and yoga. There's healthy food that serves people if you're vegan, vegetarian, or eat meat or whatever. There's options for food. There's a beach. There's a pool. There's some jungle hikes available. So our days will be broken into periods of free time, periods of rest, and periods of focused learning with things like meditation and yoga as options that are there for everyone. We'll also have some other meaningful group exercises that we'll do that will be, again, about how do you connect with an oracle? How do you make a conversation with the oracle a daily part of your life? So that's something of the format that you can look forward to in this beautiful kind of oceanside retreat setting. More information on the website. I'll show you that in a second. Who is this for? Ideally, you are someone who has a background in traditional Hellenistic astrology already. Wherever that comes from, if it's my courses or not, I want people coming to this retreat to have some pretty good solid background in Hellenistic astrology already. Or if you're from within our programs, then as long as you are enrolled in the year 1 program, you don't have to have finished it. You just need to be at least enrolled in it. Then you would be more than welcome. Any alumni from any of our programs would be welcome. And again, people who have some serious background in traditional astrology already, just because I don't want people to come along with maybe a modern background, but zero understanding of Hellenistic. So that would be who I would recommend this for. Spaces are limited and we anticipate the retreat will fill up rather quickly. So I really recommend registering as soon as you can. You also have the early bird rates to help you save. Finally, how do I register? I'm going to take you over to the website and you will find that here, the website, you can find it under the events page. Go to Immersive Retreat, or under the courses, it's our new course called The Oracle Within. When you scroll down, you're going to see everything that the program includes, basically everything I've gone over, maybe a little bit more details and depth there, as well as a little personal note for me that I wrote about why this means so much to me. You'll learn more about Mar de Jade, which is the beautiful retreat center. You can check it out. You're going to book through us. So you don't book through the retreat center, you book through us, and then we take care of it. At the bottom, you're going to find registration options that will be available starting on August 11th. That's today. Right now, as I'm looking at this, we don't have the prices listed yet. It's still kind of under construction. But at the bottom, you'll find different available options for registering. The different options will include different room options. And there's different, so if you want a private room versus maybe sharing a room with someone we'll assign you with that's part of the group, or maybe even a small group dorm room where there's like 5 people are sharing a room and you're comfortable being with other students on the trip, stuff like that. So there'll be some options there for everyone. There's an early bird rate that'll be in effect until October, saves you a little bit of money off the cost. And then also all of the different room options that are available at different price tiers depending on, and they go first come, first serve in terms of like, so there's some ocean view rooms. The people who book first will, get the best. We just go best available first and just run it like that. So anyway, again, as you are looking over anything on the page, you have any questions, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. I hope that this has been helpful. I can't wait to have finally an immersive in-person training program in a beautiful location. It's nice to do things online, but I really love having in-person time available. And I know that you're going to also really enjoy working with Ashley. During the evenings throughout the week, Ashley will also have some little workshops that she'll be offering as options for people that are part of your retreat package that will be on plant spirit medicine topics and how to use different plant teachers to work with different astrological signatures in the chart. You got a difficult Mars, work with this plant. You got a challenged Venus, try this plant. So there's going to be some really fun little add-ons around plant spirit medicine that Ashley, if you know her on my channel, she talks about plants often, will also lead. So anyway, that's it. That's your informational video. I hope that this was useful. Hope to see some of you on the retreat in Mexico next year. Take it easy, everyone.